Greetings, traveler. The word game designer has been one that's been around the games industry for a long time. But does it refer to someone creating art or to someone creating the rules for a game? Let's dive into that today. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 14 years now, and I've worked in companies like Electronic Arts, Cygames, Triace. So I've done a bit of development on the Western philosophy of making video games and some on the Japanese side. And whenever someone says that they're a game designer, that always seems to confuse people, especially here in Japan, but internationally as well. So where does this confusion come from? Well, when you say designer, people think in a visual way. So when you say you design buildings, that typically means you define the shape, the look and the form of the building. When you say you're a graphic designer, that means images, right? What does it mean when you say you're a game designer? Well, if you look at the meaning of the word designer itself, it means you design something, you designate its form. But when it comes to the rules of a game, the story and the items and the values each parameter should have, like strength and speed and so on, that is also a sort of design. So for someone who creates the content, the rules of a game, so not something you can see with your eyes, but something that affects gameplay, it's a rule. Just like in chess, there's a rule of how far each pawn can move per turn. That is a rule. So rules themselves and the story needs to be designed too. So the general international term for this is game designer, for the person who creates the rules. So if that's who the game designer is, then what about the people creating visual art? So character illustrations, 3D graphics, UI, and so on. For that, we call them character designers or 3D modelers or UI designers, UI artists. And usually the word artist is the most convenient one for differentiating between someone who designs rules or other things and someone who works with visual art. So if you say character artist, then that's a very clear nudge in the direction of visual art, something you draw with a pencil or with a program on the computer. Game designer, on the other hand, refers to the person creating the rules and the lore and the story and the content of the game in that sense. So I know it's a part that's very confusing, especially when you first hear about these types of jobs and what the responsibility of each position is. So I wanted to make a short video about it to explain the difference. And if you think that's confusing, let me give you a bonus confusing story. So when I started working in Japan and I said that I'm working as a game designer, or I'm interested in game designer positions, that was particularly confusing to recruiters, to the HR departments of various game companies and so on, because they also said, oh, okay, so you like art, you make art. I'm like, no, that's not not that. They're like, oh, well, what do you do then? And I said, the rules of the game, the items, the monsters, all that stuff. Like, oh, so you're a planner. I'm like, what is a planner, precious? So in Japan, for some reason, the word planner seems to have dominated for the role of someone creating the content of the game in the sense of rules and items and so on. And in fact, there are several subcategories of planner. So you can be a level planner or story planner. Sometimes story planners are referred to as scenario writers or story writers and so on. So there's many subdivisions of that, but the word planner itself seems to be a stand-in for what we commonly refer to as game designer. in the industry. And even more confusingly, the word designer. So if you say, I work on games, and people say, what do you do in games? And you say, I'm a designer, then that automatically means in Japan that you make art, you make visual stuff, UI and characters and 3D models and illustrations and stuff. So that's super duper confusing, but hopefully this helps a little bit to show you the landscape that exists right now. And if someone says one of these words, perhaps you have a better context to think about them with. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope this helps. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, have fun.